As promised, criminology, here is lecture 7. Okay, so just give me until noon to get the question 5 quizzes correct. And again, you will have the week to do that. So chapter 7 is on social process theories. Wasting no time. Let's get to it. Share screen. And we have it. Okay, so this week also, we just went over social structure theories. We're combining that with social process theories. This week, as in other weeks as well, there are always some learning objectives. These objectives can be found in the specific week on our Blackboard course, but they can also be found at the beginning of every single chapter. This week, or with this chapter, there are just 6, so I'm going to go over them. Walsh and Jorgensen want us to take away from this chapter and walk away being able to describe the basic premise of social process theories and how they differ from that of social structure theories, which we just went over. We should be able to examine differential association theory and criticism surrounding it, discuss how social learning theory improved differential association theory, compare the fundamental differences in terms of Sowell's visions between social learning and social control and self-control theories, explain how labeling and neutralizing theory led to different policy recommendations, and lastly, be able to evaluate the policy and prevention implications of social process theories. So our first section goes into the social process tradition, okay? The social process tradition, when it comes to the social process tradition, social process criminologists operate from the sociologic perspective known as symbolic interactionism. Symbolic interactionists focus on how people interpret and define their social reality and the meanings they attach to it in the process of interacting with one another via language. And this language is symbols, okay? Social process theorists believe that if we wish to understand social behavior, we have to understand how individuals subjectively perceive their social reality and how they interact with others to create, sustain, and change it. Some process theories focus on the reverse process of learning pro-social attitudes and behavior in the face of temptation to do otherwise. All social process theories represent the joining of sociology and psychology to varying extents. Okay, again, for those of you in my Soc 101, which is Intro to Soc, a lot of this in chapter 7 is going to sound familiar and repetitive. Pardon for that, but again, as we learned in the first couple of chapters, criminology is a mixture of disciplines. Okay, sociology, psychology, etc. So differential association theory is one of the theories that we have gone through in Soc 101. So this again might sound repetitive for some of you. Differential association theory, DAT. Okay, differential association theory has been formulated by Edwin Sutherland, whose ambition was to devise a theory that could explain both individual criminality and aggregate crime rates by identifying conditions that must be present for crime to occur and that are absent when crimes are absent. Okay. This theory asserts that criminal behavior is learned through association with others who communicate their values and their attitude. His theory attempted to provide mechanisms by which factors such as social disorganization led to crime. Although Sutherland explicitly denied the role of psychology in crime delinquency, his theory implicitly, some would say explicitly, is psychological in that it focuses on the process of becoming delinquent via subjective social definitions of reality and attitude formation. Okay. According to differential association theory, the learning of criminal behavior involves the same culturally transmitted mechanisms involved in any other learning and includes specific skills and techniques for committing crimes, as well as the motives, the rationalization, the justifications, the attitudes of criminals. Like Walter Miller in his focal concerns theory, Sutherland saw low-income culture as having its own integrity and organization, and he disdained the phrase social disorganization as insulting, substituting differential social organization. Okay. Definitions refer to the meaning our experiences have for us and how we see things, our attitudes, values, habitual ways of viewing the world. Definitions become favorable to law violation according to the frequency, duration, priority, and intensity of exposure to them. Okay. So Edwin Sutherland he has 9 propositions about criminal behavior. So again, Edwin Sutherland, he proposed these 9 propositions for criminal behavior. The first one is that criminal behavior is learned. The second is that criminal behavior is learned in interaction with other persons during a process of communication. The third is that the principal part of learning a criminal behavior or criminal behaviors occurs with intimate personal groups. The fourth, when criminal behavior is learned, learning includes techniques of committing the crime, which are sometimes complicated and sometimes simple, and the specific direction of motives, drives, rationalizations, and attitudes. The fifth, okay, is that the specific direction of motives and drives is learned from definitions of the legal codes as favorable or unfavorable. The sixth, okay, a person becomes delinquent because of an excess of definitions favorable to violation of law over definitions unfavorable to violations of law. The seventh is that differential association may vary in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. The eighth, okay, the process of learning criminal behavior by association with criminal and non-criminal patterns involves all the mechanisms in any other learning. And then the final proposition was that while criminal behavior is an expression of general needs and values, it is not explained by those needs and values, since non-criminal behavior is an expression of the same needs and values. So let's evaluate differential association theory. But before we get to that, here is a figure illustrating differential association theory. Okay, so pause here. There is also an example in your textbook that you can read before viewing this figure. So pause here, view this figure, and make sure you understand how a differential association works. So let's evaluate differential association theory. Okay. Differential association theory is in the unconstrained version camp in that it assumes that antisocial behavior is learned. It's not something that comes naturally in the absence of pro-social training. Differential association theory is criticized for ignoring individual differences in the propensity to associate with antisocial peers. Sutherland was specifying a path in which differential association clearly intervenes between individual differences and crimes as follows. So people have individual differences, there are contracts with criminal patterns, and then a crime ensues or crime happens. Okay. And that also in defense of differential association theory, the concept of differential social organization accounts for the associations people have. Mark Warr in 2002 criticizes differential association theory for having a singular vision of peer influence. Warr makes a distinction between 2 approaches to influence delinquent peers: private acceptance and compliance. He says that differential association theory was formulated only with private acceptance in mind while ignoring the whole idea of compliance. The next theory is social learning theory, okay? So Acker's social learning theory, SLT, goes beyond looking solely at learned definitions favorable to getting involved in delinquency to looking at mechanisms that lead individuals to either continue or desist from it. Ackers and his colleague Robert Burgess applied the powerful concept of operant psychology to this issue and claimed it was the differential reinforcement of behavior that either amplified or extinguished criminal behavior. Differential reinforcement is defined as the balance of anticipated or actual rewards and punishment that follows or are consequences of behavior. Okay. So the theory focuses on 4 basic principles, okay? And the 4 principles, do I have them listed out? Yeah, I do, okay? So the 4 basic principles are that he or she, hold on just a second. Yes, so the theory focuses on 4 principles, okay? So he or she differentially associates with others who commit, model, and support violations of social and legal norms. This is differential association. 2, the violative behavior is differentially reinforced over behavior in conformity to the norm. This is differential reinforcement. 3, he or she is more exposed to and observes more deviant models than conforming models. This is imitation. And 4, his or her own learned definitions are favorable towards committing the deviant acts, excess of definitions, okay? The most important is differential reinforcement, okay? Again, the most important of these 4 principles is differential reinforcement, which is based on the principles of operant psychology. Okay. Oops. Okay. So quickly, reinforcement, just going over these, just continuing along with it. Reinforcement is either positive or negative. So if reinforcement is positive, it's something rewarding that is received. If it's negative, it's something punished or avoided. Punishment, which leads to the weakening or the eliminating of the behavior preceding it, can also be positive or negative. Discrimination is another important of social learning theory, SLT. Discriminative stimuli are signals or clues transmitted by others indicating the kinds of behaviors that will be rewarded or punished in a particular social context. And then the evaluation of social learning theory. Okay, SLT, social learning theory, adds to differential association theory by specifying how definitions favorable to law violations are learned by operant conditioning, although it neglects the role of individual differences in the ease or difficulty with which the person learns. All complex behavior is social learning, so it does not help much to say that crime is socially learned. What we really need to know is why some people are inclined to learn one thing and other people are inclined to learn other things, and what makes them succeed or fail in learning their endeavors. Lastly, social learning theory is criticized because it is said to neglect individual differences, but Ackers disagrees with this claim. The 4th part of our chapter, chapter 7, goes into the social control tradition, okay? Control theories assume that criminal behavior requires no special motivation. Rather, such behavior arises from natural motivations that we must learn to curb. Thus, they are very different from learning theories, okay? To ensure a peaceful and predictable social existence, all societies have created mechanisms designed to minimize nonconformity and deviance that we may collectively call social control. Again, these are mechanisms designed to minimize nonconformity. Okay. Social control may be direct, it can be formal and coercive, as exemplified by uniform symbols of the state. But indirect and informal social control is preferable because it produces pro-social behavior regardless of the presence or absence of external coercion. Travis Hershey's social bonds theory, again, going on with the social control tradition. So Travis Hershey's social bond theory is one of the most popular social control theories. It focuses mainly on a person's bond to others. Control theorists tell us that we behave well if our ties to pro-social others are strong, but we may revert to predatory self-interest if they're not strong. Tremblay has stated that by monitoring the development of physical aggression from infancy onwards, recent longitudinal studies show that human infants spontaneously use physical aggression and that humans learn not to physically aggress, rather learn to aggress. Okay. And then social control theory is thus about the role of social relationships that bind people to the social order and prevent antisocial behavior. There are 4 elements of the social bond. These 4 elements are attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief, okay? Attachment is the emotional component. I am like shaking. I am so sorry. So attachment, let me pause this, and because I think I'm shaking for some reason. So let me pause this and like steady this on a platform. So I now have it propped up. I'm so sorry, but I was like trembling for some reason. I gotta have my coffee, I guess. I'm sorry. So again, there are 4 elements of social bond theory, and we're gonna go through all of them. They are attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief. Attachment is the emotional component of conformity and refers to the emotional bonds existing between the individual and key social institutions. These social institutions can be things such as family and school. Commitment is the rational component of conformity and refers to a lifestyle in which one has invested considerable time and energy in the pursuit of a lawful career. Okay. Involvement, try not to tip this over. Involvement is the opportunity component of conformity and is a direct consequence of commitment. It is part of an overall conventional pattern of existence. Okay, and then belief is the moral component of conformity and refers to the acceptance of the social norms regulating conduct. Okay. Gottfredson and Hershey's low self-control theory. So with colleague Michael Gottfredson in 1990, Hershey moved from explaining crime and delinquency in terms of social control towards explaining it in terms of self-control. Self-control is defined as the extent to which different people are vulnerable to the temptations of the moment. Self-control theory accepts that classical ideas of crimes are the result of unstrained natural human impulses to enhance pleasure and avoid pain. According to Gottfredson and Hershey, low self-control is established early during childhood, so between the ages of 8 and 10 years old, and tends to persist throughout life, and is the result of incompetent parenting. The role of opportunity. The role of opportunity. What explains variation in criminal behavior among low self-control individuals is variation in the opportunities to commit crime. A criminal opportunity is a situation that presents itself to someone with low self-control. by which he or she can immediately satisfy needs with minimal mental or physical effort. Self-control theory is thus similar to routines activity theory in this respect. Crime is the result of people with low self-control. Low self-control, which is a motivated offender meeting a criminal opportunity, which is a suitable target lacking a capable guardian. Okay. The difference is that low self-control theory emphasizes the motivation of the offender and ignores the target and the guardian, whereas routines activity theory does the opposite. Integrating social control and self-control theories. Hershey welds the social control and self-control theories together with two simple sentences. Self-control is the set of inhibitions one carries with one wherever one goes. Their character may be initially described by going to the elements of the bond identified by social control theory: attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief. Hershey welds the social control and self-control theories together with two simple sentences. Self-control is the set of inhibition one carries with one wherever one goes. Their character may be initially described by going to the elements of the bond identified by social control theory: again, attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief. Okay. So here is a figure of Hershey's integration of social control and self-control theories. Okay, pause here. Again, make sure you guys know the difference between social control theory on its own, self-control theory on its own, and then here where Hershey and Gottfredson merge these two. Again, this is a figure of Hershey's integration of social control and self-control theories. So pause here, take a view at this, and continue. Okay. Continuing on with the social control tradition, but the evaluation of social control and self-control theories. Okay. So Matt DeLacy asserts that self-control is primarily, but not completely, a brain-based disorder and that Gottfredson and Hershey were wrong in saying that parenting was the sole cause of self-control. If we combine both theories and treat them as one theory, as Hershey now does, more contemporary criminologists, about 17.4%, checked it as the theory that best explains criminal behavior. Okay. So criticism of self-control theory: critics feel that if family is so important as both versions of control theory suggest, the social, economic, and political factors that impede stable and nurturing families should also be addressed. So control theorists might respond that whatever those things may be, they are not within the purview of control theory, which attempts to explain the consequences of weak and disrupted families, not why they are disrupted. A major criticism of self-control theory arises from the claim that it is a general theory meant to explain all crime. Self-control theory also has been criticized for attributing variations in people's levels of self-control solely to variations in parental behavior and ignoring child effects and/or neighborhood effects. And Pratt, Turner, and Picaro in 2004 found that adverse neighborhood conditions had an independent effect on self-control and that it was equally as strong as parenting effects. Okay. So let's move on to labeling theory and the irony of social reaction. Okay. Labeling theory. So labeling theory, LT, is the school of thought which takes seriously the power of bad labels to stigmatize and by doing so evoke the very behavior the labels signify. For labeling theorists, Crime has no objective reality and is defined into existence rather than discovered. LT is often traced to Frank Tannenbaum's 1938 Crime and the Community. Okay. Primary deviance is the initial non-conforming act that comes to the attention of the authorities. Okay. Primary deviance is of interest to labeling theories only insofar as it is detected and reacted to by individuals with power to pin and to power to pin a stigmatizing label to the rule breaker. According to labeling theory, being caught in the act of primary deviance is the result of either a systematic bias or sheer bad luck. The real criminogenic experience comes after a person is caught and labeled. The central concern of labeling theory is thus to explain the consequences of being labeled. Secondary deviance results from society's reaction to primary deviance of those who have been caught. Okay. The stigma of a criminal label may result in people becoming more criminal than they would have been if they had not been caught. This may occur in two different ways. First, the labeled person may alter their self-concept in conformity with the label. So, for example, the person may say, yes, I am a criminal, and will act like one more in the future. And the second, the label may be excluded from the conventional life domains like employment or schooling and lead to the loss of conventional ties to others. So let's go on to Seiken-Matza's neutralization theory. So Seiken-Matza's neutralization theory, NT, attacks differential association's failure to explain why some people drift in and out of crime rather than being consistently criminal. It also runs counter to the assumption of differential association theory and subcultural theories that give the impression that criminal behavior is endowed with positive values and condoned as morally right. Neutralization theory suggests that delinquents and criminals know their behavior is wrong, but they justify it on a number of grounds. Doing so allows offenders to drift into and out of criminal conduct without buying into criminal definitions or identifying as a criminal. Okay. NT, or neutralization theory, has given rise to Seiken-Matza's 5 techniques of neutralization. These 5 techniques of neutralization are denial of responsibility, denial of injury, denial of a victim, condemnation of condemners, and an appeal to higher loyalties. For some reason, I feel like I've gone over this section of the chapter in a lecture. I'm not sure, but if I have, pardon, and I'll probably upload that video also to this week, but let's go over the 5 techniques of neutralization. So denial of responsibility. Denial of responsibility shifts the blame for a deviant act away from the actor. So for example, I know she was whatever age, but she seduced me. Denial of injury is an offender's claim that no real offense occurred because no one was harmed. They got their car back, they have insurance, etc. Okay. Denial of a victim implies that the victim got what he or she deserves. I guess I did beat her up, but, she kept nagging all the time. She asked for it, he asked for it, etc. Okay. Condemnation of condemners involves the attempt by which the offender, involves attempts by the offender to share guilt with the condemners. So for example, parents, police, probation officers, by asserting that their behavior is just as bad as his or hers. Like, you drink booze too. You smoke weed too. What's the difference? And then an appeal to higher loyalties. Okay. This alleviates the offender's moral integrity by claiming altruistic motives. You know, I have to cover my homie's back, don't I? So that would be an example. Okay. The motive behind employing these techniques is assumed to be the maintenance of a non-criminal self-image by individuals who have committed a criminal act and have been asked to explain why. Okay. If we engage in behavior we consider morally wrong but find the behavior rewarding, we tend to develop a form of psychological discomfort called a cognitive dissonance. Okay. Evaluating labeling and neutralization theories. Ackers criticizes labeling theory for coming close to asserting that the original causes of delinquent and criminal behavior, so primary deviance, do not matter, with its overemphasis in the importance of official labeling. One of the positive elements of neutralization theory is that it eliminates much of the overdetermined image of subcultural values implied in subcultural theories. Neutralization techniques are not viewed as causes of antisocial behavior. Rather, they're a set of justifications that loosen moral constraints and allow offenders to drift in and out of social behavior because they are able to neutralize these constraints. One of the major problems with the theory is that it says nothing about the origins of antisocial behaviors, the antisocial behavior the actor seeks to neutralize. And then also, some studies have found that neutralization techniques are able to explain, or were able to explain, future deviance. Okay. The last section of chapter 7 goes into the policy prevention implications of social process theories. So the bottom line for all subcultural theories is that low-income neighborhoods harbor values and attitudes conducive to criminal behavior. Thus, if learning crime and delinquency within a particular culture, hold on, pause. So far, sorry for that interruption. I forgot where I ended off, but let's start over with the policy and prevention implications of social process theories. So the bottom line for all subcultural theories is that low-income neighborhoods harbor values and attitudes conducive to criminal behaviors. Thus, if learning crime and delinquency within a particular culture is a problem, changing relative aspects of that culture is the answer. But this has been met with very little success. Because differential association theory concerns itself with the influence of role models and intimate peer groups, the provision of pro-social role models to replace antisocial ones is an obvious thought. Probation and parole authorities have long recognized the importance of keeping convicted felons away from each other, making it a offense to associate with known felons. Okay. The policy implications derivable from social control and self-control theories have to do with the family. Okay. Given the importance of nurturance and attachment, both versions of control theory support the idea that early family interventions are designed to cultivate these things. Okay. Attempts to increase bonding to social institutions would concentrate on increasing children's involvement in a variety of pro-social activities and programs centered in and around the school. Gottfredson and Hershey advocate some of the same policies advocated by rational choice and routine activities to reduce criminal opportunities. Most important policy recommendations is to strengthen families, improve parenting skills, especially skills relevant to teaching self-control, which are not difficult. If the causes of primary deviance are secondary to the labeling process, preventative efforts should focus on non-interventionism. Labeling theory recommends that we allow offenders to protect their self-image as non-criminals by not challenging their techniques of neutralization. Useful policy ideas derived from labeling theory include the decriminalization of mala prohibita crimes, juvenile diversion programs, and keeping non-serious offenders out of jails and prisons. The only policy implication of neutralization theory is opposite that of labeling theory, that is criminal justice agents charged with managing offenders, so those that are probation officers or parole officers, should strongly challenge their excuse making, okay? So I believe that is it, okay? So I will upload this lecture right now, fix quiz 5, and get everything to you. So again, pardon my look, I'm trying to get this to you as fast as I can. And yeah, have a great day, guys, okay? So the exam, not the exam, the quiz should be up today. And you will again have a week to complete that. Again, I set the dates for you, but they're going to remain open for the remainder of the semester. Sound good? Bye. Have a good one.